morning, you glorious over 3,000 people and the 83% who have yet to subscribe. Today, we're going to talk about the hot topic of Age of Sigmar, and that is, are we in a manifestation meta? That's right. So, like a lot of people, I have played quite a few games of 4th edition, and there is something definitely sticking out like a bulldog's bollocks, and that is manifestations. And if you watched yesterday's video where I cover some of the lists for the Northern Ireland GT, which is happening next week, you will see when I was talking about that we have 20 players in the tournament out of the 47 have all got the same manifestations. I mean, it was like the next to them were like 3. The next highest was like 3. 20 players has the morbid conjurations, and the reason for that is basically because of these Suffering Gravetide and Purple Son of Heish. You also have the Shackles, which is really good, and you have the little Maelstrom bomb thing, which is really handy as well. But the question is, are we moving into a manifestation meta? Because they do feel as though they are mandatory things that you have to bring in your army. Now, I've had to sort of dig through boxes to find mine, because, like, you know, they come out in 2nd edition in a big box, and then there was, like, another box set that come out, was it, like, Forbidden Powers or something? And that come with, like, the undead themed with the boat and the bridge and all of that kind of stuff. I don't have those ones, but they're definitely, you know, like pretty hard to get to, pretty hard to get at least. And I had to, like, because I couldn't find my Shackles, I had to go to eBay and buy Shackles. I think I also went to eBay to pick up another one of them as well, and we'll probably end up going to eBay to pick up Umbral Spell Portals because I don't have those ones. Other than that, I have pretty much all the rest. So they're pretty hard to get to. Games Workshop are really not doing a great job in actually supplying them, but they have created this sort of rule scenario, this sort of need and mandatory want of having them. Like, you have to have them in your list. They are really impactful. I played a game last week against Lumineth Realm Lords, and my Suffering Gravetide and Purple Sun pretty much just hemmed in the center of my opponent's army, allowing the rest of my army to do what it needed to do on the flanks, and secured me a great victory. It did damage, it did everything else. Now, we are playing with an FAQ currently that is stopping you from just moving into combat with your maelstroms, your manifestations, because currently there's nothing really stopping them from doing that. So you know, we're having to stop outside of 3 and then charge. Yeah, I'm not really getting the mortal damage which we normally would unless I'm really close and being able to fly around for a bit. But yeah, I'm really mainly using them for myself as sort of tagging and sort of blocking in units and using them as a really screen. And that's the issue, because right now, and I had a great example of this in my last game. My opponent was kicking the crap out of my Suffering Gravetide. It had 1 wound left. It was in his phase, and I got rid of it. I dispelled it, I banished it, and then in my turn, I brought it straight back. So, yeah. You know, and yeah, so I just brought it straight back and put it in position on the screen, and then my next turn it moved forward and then pinned him back into place again. And then with the piling in, I was able to turn it to its side and tag and pull in its sentinels, stopping him from being able to shoot that turn as well. And they were seriously impactful to the game. So the question is, are we moving into a meta? Are these the new meta? Which definitely feels like it. It definitely starts feeling a little bit like 2nd edition when they first come in, and we got things like the Change Host, which was just basically your army of Zinch and then like 19 friggin' endless spells, and it was just endless spells everywhere. It's definitely feeling like that again. They're feeling a little bit uncontrollable. But how do we fix this? How do we stop these from becoming an issue? There's been a lot of discourse about this on the internet. There's been a lot of talk about these on the internet, how to fix the problem, how to solve the issue, and all sorts of things, ranging from that if they be killed, you can't summon them again, or removal completely from the game, which I do have my views on that, and I would be okay with it. If we are to have manifestations, I would really like them to be order themed. So I would like a manifestation set for order. I'd like a manifestation set for destruction. We already have plenty of manifestations for death, and I'd like some manifestations for chaos. Rather than be faction specific, I'd rather them being sort of allegiance specific. If not, at least the Winds of Magic specific. Because right now we don't really have anything there. And that's the same thing for the prayers as well. The prayers invocations could quite easily be the same. Rather than the Magmadroths having theirs, Khorne having theirs, Stormcast Eternals who don't have prayers invocations, they have the spell manifestations. It would be kind of cool if they were sort of a little bit more themed around the 4 distinct factions of the game. Yes, we have lots of armies in the game, but we have 4 distinct main factions of the game. Order, Chaos, Death, Destruction. And that has been like that since day 1 of the game, and I would like to see that sort of be the manifestations of how they're brought in, because the magic that these factions use are relatively the same. Like, all death factions are pretty much using death magic. Doesn't matter what we call it, it is death magic. All order factions are essentially using either magic of the light or magic of the lightning, or mainly the good elements of the magic. And chaos are obviously using all the bad stuff, and destruction, well, they're just doing destruction things. But you can get to have some really fun, quirky elements of that, and the design team could really, really have a good time doing it. And it's 4 boxes, and it's really easy to get hold of, rather than in this big box. And these, I believe, were some of the things that were made in China. Now, the biggest one that is obviously a lot of other people say is they're not very good. And you're right, they're not the most amazing of miniatures. They're literally, this thing come in 2 parts. And I believe these were, the manifestations of the endless spells were created in China. And that's probably the reason why they're pretty hard to get hold of right now. But yeah, I'm firmly in belief that I'm good for them to go. Points, I don't think points would work. I don't think points would work in that regard, because things are already expensive as it is. I mean, what are you going to point them? Are you going to put a Purple Sun at 90 points again? Yeah, okay, you're probably not going to see them, but armies that really can utilize them will build into that regardless. So, and they will make sure that, you know, they've got the points left on one side and get them. Like my Seraphon army, as a prime example that I'm bringing to the GT, has 80 points spare. Now, if you made me pay for my manifestations, I would go, well, obviously I can fit my Purple Sun in there with that 80 points. I'm just going to throw that in, and I will bring that Purple Sun every single time. So maybe points aren't the best way of doing it. Maybe I do like the more elegant ways. They're only used once per game. You summon them once per game, and once they're dead. Just like every other unit in the game. That would kind of cool. That would be kind of cool. Maybe that would be kind of have a little bit more impact in the game, and it would make them a little bit more risk reward to use. I mean, okay, they're really good screen units, and I can block things out. But, you know, if I throw them into this unit, it's probably going to get killed, and then I'm not going to get to use it again, and then I lose my screen, or I could use it. But there's also another thing, as another element as well. Some armies just aren't built for magic, and they don't really have access to prayers. So if you look at Cities of Sigmar, like, their wizards that they have is they've got the Battle Mage, they've got a Battle Mage on a Griffin, and then they've got the Warforger. That's it. They don't really have any big casters. They've got, I believe, a Battle Mage is a 2-cast wizard, a Warforger is a 1-cast, and I think a Battle Mage on a Hippogriff is a 1-cast. So they don't really have that much magical output, so they're not really utilizing these manifestations that well. And there's no prayer manifestations for them to take, because all the prayer manifestations that we have in the game, the invocations, are linked to a faction. So they don't even have that set. So they're, like, Cities of Sigmar are really kind of screwed. And then you have other armies like Lumineth and Seraphon who have absolute ubercasters and can really benefit and really lean into what these things can do. And then you have Tzeentch, who are just Tzeentch. So yeah, I think that's all we need to talk about, really. It's an interesting one. It's interesting to see how this goes, if there's going to be an FAQ. There's a lot of talk. I know at the GT, we've FAQ'd it. Well, not me personally, but the TOs, the guys at Saltmine Gaming, have FAQ'd it that manifestations have to stop outside of 3 inches of an enemy unit, which is a really big change. We'll be interested to see how Games Workshop officially FAQ them. There are other aspects of them as well. Some of them are pretty amazing. Like, you can't banish a Purple Sun. You know, if you banish a Purple Sun, it doesn't disappear. It just takes D6 mortal damage. Or 6 mortal damage. That's pretty crazy. So yeah, you know, there are elements of this that some of them are going to be sticking around for a while. So it'll be interesting to see what GW do with them in regards to an FAQ, or what they're going to do in a year's time, of what the landscape of the game will look like in a year's time. They've had plenty of opportunity to sort of give all factions manifestations and the spells and faction terrain. I also believe that faction terrain as well should be binned. Personally, it's it's an additional cost that your army has to get, and if your army doesn't have faction terrain, then you don't really need to worry. Like, Cities of Sigmar don't have faction terrain. They don't have any of the spells. Cool. Some armies have to have it, and it's like mandatory that they have to have that faction terrain. The Lumineth Realm Shrine is a perfect example of that. So, you know, it's one of those things. So that's this topic. If you've got views on this, let me know in the comments below what you think. Should we get rid of them? Should we give them points? Should we have them as a once per battle thing? Like, how do we fix this? How do we discourage players from using them all the time? Because they're really, really good. They're really, really impactful to the game. So obviously competitive players are always going to use them. And the more and more competitive players do something, the more and more that the casual player base are going to start following, because they see that this is good, and they can see that they can have a powerful element to their army for their pickup games at their local gaming clubs. It's always inevitably that's going to happen. If a cookie cutter, as an example, if you're playing a computer game and there's a cookie cutter build that is done by the 1% of players that are pushing high-end content, that you can guarantee that 1% cookie cutter build will filter down into the casual, non-hardcore player base, because that's the most optimal way of playing your character, and they can just copy what you're doing because they don't need to think about it. And that's generally how this is going to work in Age of Sigmar 4th edition as well. Manifestations have already been shown to be strong. Morbid Conjurations is already being shown to be the strong lore, manifestation lore out of all of them. So obviously that's the one that people are pulling the most. We have 20 Purple Suns next week. It's going to be glorious. But let me know in the comments what you think, and while you're there, smash that like button, ring that bell, and most importantly, subscribe and become part of the masses, and help me bring that 84% to 83% down, and let me grow. It's all amazing. Thank you very much for all the support. I will catch you later, you glorious people.